then what would be your plans to do so?
Well, I'll speak for myself, and then I do want our whip to speak as well. Look, I have said that I think we need to rebuild the party. I think for too long our party has been held hostage to big money interests. Some of that comes from the fact that we allow money in politics in ways that are incredibly destructive to the voice of the people getting through. Some of it is due to longstanding structures like the filibuster, where you can have a simple majority pass all kinds of bills in a Democratic House and then they won't get through in a Democratic Senate. But it also has to do with how willing we are to fight for working people and poor people across this country. And I'm very deliberately putting in poor and working people, because if you look at the results of how we lost the under 100,000 category of voters, this is very important for us to recognize. People are tired, and you might say to me, well, how come, is that a rejection of the Biden era policies and the things that we got done in the first 2 years? And I would just say it is not a rejection. And I haven't seen many of you talking about this, but tell me if some of you have. We passed a whole bunch of really important pandemic relief policies at the end of the Trump administration, which he put his names on, but it was Democrats who really pushed for those relief checks, and then the beginning of the Biden administration. Rent relief, mortgage eviction assistance, public transit assistance, child tax credit, small business assistance. You can go through the list of things we passed, and then they got taken away. They got taken away by Republicans getting elected to the House, and no longer could we generate the will to keep those in place. So tangibly, people did lose something. They were measurably worse off because now they had inflation with no assistance from the federal government, which Democrats had pushed so hard. I don't think we messaged that well. I think we need to figure out how to do better on that. And I think we've got to pick some big fights where people can't be in denial or question whether or not we are standing up for them or whether we're standing up to the big corporate interests, because I think that we have more work to do on that. And I think it's a difficult message to send when you're trying to court money from that community, and at the same time you're saying we need regulation around this. I think the Biden administration did a really good job. Look at the fact that Lina Khan was in Arizona campaigning with Ruben Gallego, who won his race on price gouging and antitrust and monopoly. But let me ask Rep. Casar if he wants to add anything to that.
There clearly what is, as a fact of life right now, an unfortunate and tragic fact of life, a massive right-wing propaganda machine, and everybody here in the media I know competes with it and knows it. It's a tragic fact of life, a right-wing propaganda machine, and right-wing officials that make people's lives worse. They are the arsonists, but then they blame the firefighters for the flames, time after time after time. And the question for the Democratic Party is, what do you do in response to it? Because that's not going to change, and that's only going to get worse under the Trump administration. And the Democratic Party's response, I think, has to very clearly be for working people as the core of who it is that we are. For working and working class people and poor people and for everyday people. We should not abandon being the party of civil rights. We should be standing up for the rights of every single person, as Representative elect McBride just laid out. But that's what people need to hear from us first. And I think, when you asked about whether the American people moved rightward in your question, I was in swing state after swing state talking to undecided voter after independent voter. And I sensed very few, if any of them, moving actually rightward. What they wanted was a government that actually worked for them. What they wanted was somebody to make it cost less and for them not to have to keep working harder and harder to be able to make ends meet. Now, if you look at the Democratic Party platform versus the Republican Party platform, that's pretty clear that, for example, Trump's tax scam is largely benefiting the 1%, whereas Democrats are trying to help everyday people. But in talking to those voters, they said, I don't know whether, who is really for who and what here is really real. And I can't blame them for that. And so I think our job is to make it really clear who we stand up for and that we're willing to stand up against the powers that be for those everyday people. And that's what these new members have been able to do so effectively in their campaigns. And I think that's what the future of a majoritarian, progressive, principled, and popular Democratic Party can be.
Okay. Well